Okay, so it's 9 o'clock. My name's Stuart Davey, and I'm a Principal Solution Engineer with the MySQL Business Unit within Oracle. And today we're going to learn about setting up a LAMP stack, specifically with MySQL HeatWave. MySQL HeatWave is a MySQL database service in the Oracle Cloud. So this is the agenda, it's quite self-explanatory. I'm going to talk about what a LAMP stack is, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, then go through some installations, showing you how to do it. Then we're going to discuss building out for production, and then just some tweaks and alternatives to the LAMP stack. So without further ado, what is the LAMP stack? Well, it allows web developers to build and deploy and manage web applications. It's been around forever. It's still very relevant. I saw a survey the other day that said still more than 50% of all new web applications are using the LAMP stack. So it's very, very relevant. It's an acronym for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So the operating system, the web server, the database, and the programming language that allows you to connect, implement your business logic in your website. It's a stack because all these technologies are laid on top of each other. You can have it on one server or across multiple servers. So let's see that diagrammatically. We have a server and storage. We put an operating system on it. We install MySQL on it. Then we install PHP, then the web server, and at that point, we can start serving HTTP requests, which will go down through the stack and then respond with a web page. So you can actually see your web application on a browser. Okay, very, very simple. So you want a LAMP stack. How do you get one? Okay, so with the Oracle Cloud, you've got three options. Build one from the ground up, which is what we're going to do, because that will give us a great idea of how it all hangs together and what we need to think about. You could alternatively leverage the MySQL Community Manager's Terraform scripts. And I've put a link on there to his blog that will guide you through how you actually download them, install them, and so on. Very, very simple. You could also use a pre-canned stack from the Oracle Marketplace. One thing I would point out on there is a charge on the pre-canned stack from the Oracle Marketplace, because this is where people can actually put their stacks, if you like, and effectively charge you for them. So there's a charge of 4.5 cents per hour over and above that of any cloud infrastructure that you're using. So if you go down that pre-canned stack route, be aware of that charge, and note that 4.5 cents an hour doesn't sound very much. But if you never turn it off over the course of the year, that amounts to about $394. So be aware of that. I think in EMEA, most of us won't be able to use that anyway, because there are country currency restrictions. When I tried doing it on my British account, I couldn't do it, but on my North American account, I can use it. And I guess most people will have British or European accounts and so on, so they probably won't be able to do it. The other problems, and this is also a little bit of a problem with the community managers, is you're not going to be using the latest versions of the software, because people put these things together, and of course, unless they're going to maintain them all the time, you're always going to fall behind the latest versions of the software. And the one thing I would say, particularly with the Oracle Marketplace image, is be aware of the security it provides and make some changes. So let's have a look at building from the ground up. So before we start, the best way of building from the ground up is to actually get onto your Oracle Cloud account and create a new compartment. Why do you want to create a new compartment? Because it allows you to put all your resources in one place. This makes billing so much easier, so you can end up putting a profit and a loss account effectively on a particular project. Okay, compartments are really good. We have this concept of inheritance, and because we'll be using a MySQL database service, what we need to do in our root compartment is put some policies in place to allow the service to access and use resource, as it were. Very simple to do, and I'll go through that in a few seconds. On the right-hand side of this slide is what we're going to build. Okay, so we're effectively going to create ourselves a little data center, for want of a better way of describing it. So we're going to create a compartment. In that compartment, we're going to put a virtual cloud network. Within that virtual cloud network, we're going to have a public subnet and a private subnet. In the public subnet, we're going to put our application server. And in the private subnet, we're going to put our MySQL database endpoint. Okay. And this is completely analogous to what you would do in a physical data center, on-premise data center today. Okay. You will typically always put your database away from an internet-facing subnet. But of course, we need an interface in internet-facing subnet for our application server because it has to serve web pages. As such, we have to open up some ports, port 80 and port 443, so HTTP, HTTPS. And again, the source or where the connections will come from can be anywhere on the internet, which is why I've got that source of 0.0.0.0/0 there. For the private subnet, all we need to do is open up ports for MySQL. So we've got the traditional MySQL protocol on 3306 and also the X protocol on 33060. And for our source, we're only going to allow connections from the public subnet. So I've put together a recipe showing how to do this, but now I'm actually going to do it in real time. So let's get on to my account. So the first thing I want to show you is policies and compartments. So let's go to Identity and Security and go to Policies. Now, because I've already done some work in my root compartment, I already have my MySQL database service policies here. So you can see them written down there. We can edit them if we needed to. Creating a policy is just as simple as doing this, clicking on Create, filling out this very small form. So I'm going to cancel from that. Then I'm going to go back to compartments because we need to create a compartment. So we'll create a compartment so we can keep all our resources together. So to create a compartment, again, we click on the Create Compartment thing, give it a name. I'm going to call it LAMP. So I'm creating a LAMP stack. This is my project. LAMP demo, I'm going to put in the description. And that's about all I need to do. Okay. So that's going to create a LAMP compartment, hopefully in a few seconds. I'm just going to have another look at that because I didn't see it actually do it. Let me do that again. LAMP, demo, create compartment. Oh, it already exists. Okay, so I did actually do it. Let me just click out of there somewhere else just to prove that it's there and exists. Let's go back to compartments. Yes, it's there. Okay, my panic attack over. Right, so now we've created a compartment. What we actually want to do is all that networking you saw. So I'm going to go to networking, virtual cloud networks. And what I'm actually going to do is use the VCM wizard. You can create virtual cloud networks an easy way and a hard way. The easy way is the virtual cloud network, not least because it's going to create a public and private subnet just as I want it to. So start the VCM wizard. Give it a name. I'm going to call it LAMP VCN for lack of it. I'm going to keep the subnets and seeder blocks as they are there. Go to the review page and I've reviewed it. So now I'm going to create it. And this will just take a few seconds to create. It's always the last one, the update private subnet, which takes about 10 seconds to create. But once that's done, my network is pretty much in place. All I'll have to do from there is then add the ports I want open. So I'm viewing the the virtual cloud network. And first of all, I'm going to go to the public subnet that I've got here. And what I want to do is edit my security list and add ingress rules for HTTP and HTTPS. So the source will come from anywhere on the internet. And the ports I want open are ports 80 and 443. And in my description, I'm going to go HTTP brackets S access. And that's my ingress rule pretty much added. So you can see down here, I've added those rules. So very, very simple. Let's go back to our virtual cloud network. And now let's edit the private subnet for MySQL. So add ingress rules here. So this time I'm going to make it the source seeder, the public subnet. And the ports I want to open are 3306 and 33060. Okay, and let's put that down as MySQL. And that's all we need to do. So nice and simple. That's all our networking done. So let's return now to our presentation. So all the networking's done. Now what do we need to do? We need to actually add a compute instance, or VM if you prefer that term, that's going to host Apache, PHP, and the operating system. All that's going to sit on is Oracle Linux. We also need to create a MySQL database service in our private subnet. Optionally, we could install things like, well, we're on the application server, we're installing a PHP, Apache, and so on. But we could optionally install PHP, MyAdmin, Git, and certbot. That's probably a bit much for the 30 minutes I'm allotted here, so I'm going to skip that part today. Perhaps we'll return to it in a future webinar. And again, you can see what we're actually doing with our MDS instance as well. So let's go back to the web and back to our Cloud Console and configure those items of infrastructure. Right, so now let's start off with the database, because that takes more time. So I'm going to create a database system. And I want to be in the right compartment. So let's move to our LAMP compartment over here. Now, if you hadn't got all those policies in place, this tells you how to put the policies in place. But as I already said, I have my policies in place. I don't have to worry about that. So creating compartment LAMP, let's call it LAMP-DB for want of a better way of describing it. I'm just going to make it a standalone system. I need to give myself an administrator here. I'm just going to call myself admin. Put myself in a password. Put myself in another password. Confirm the password, I should say. And let's just check. Oh, configure networking. So let's just check where our networks are. Something's gone horribly, horribly wrong here. Let me go back 1 second, because I think I've done something very, very stupid. I've managed to create a virtual cloud network in another compartment. That's very naughty of me. Okay, so let's go back and do that again. So it's always worth checking, because you can make simple mistakes like that. So I'm just quickly going to fly through this without really saying too much at all, because I've been a bit silly. And now I need to do the subnetting, the security lists again. And this is ATM443. And let's go back and now do the private subnet. And this is 3306 and 33060. Right, now that that's done, let's go on and do our database system. So let's go back. So that's how quick it is to actually recover and do things. So let's create that database system again. So I'm going to call it LAMP-DB. And this time when we come down, what we should actually see is the subnets and everything correctly positioned. So it's always quite interesting when something goes wrong on a live demonstration. Okay, so it's actually picked up my LAMP VCN and picked up my private subnet in configure networking. So that's all good. Happy with the sizes. I'm just going to create that now. And now once that's creating, I'm going to go and create my compute instance. So go to compute, go to instances, check that you're in the right network compartment, and I'm going to create the instance. I'm just going to call it app for simplicity. And we go down. Happy with the shape, happy with everything there. Let's get my private keys and let's the system generate our SSH keys for us. We need to at least bring down the private key, but we can also bring down the public key as well if we want. It's necessary to bring that private key down, otherwise you're not going to be able to log it into your system once it's created. So that's going to create, and that will take a matter of seconds pretty much to create. So whilst that's cooking, let's have a look at what else we need to do. So from current slide. Now what we're really talking about is building, configuring the system. So the first thing you should actually do when you log into the system, into the application server, is upgrade the operating system, okay? Because the operating system might be a few days old. So there might be some patches that you might want to apply. I won't actually be doing this in real time here because it takes a little bit too long for the 30 minutes I've got. Once we've done that, we need to configure the host firewall. Again, when you get a compute instance or a VM, whatever you want to call it from Oracle, it's pretty much tied down. All it will have is port 22 for SSH connectivity open for you. So we need to open up the port firewalls as well. Once we've done that, we can start installing Apache. So this again shows you how to install Apache, and we'll go through all of this. Once we've installed Apache, we'll install PHP. Once we've installed PHP, what we'll actually do is we'll, on the application servers, we'll put a MySQL client, a simple MySQL shell, so that we can easily easily administer our database. So let's go back and start doing some real work. So let's first off, what we need to do is log in and into our application server. So I'm just going to change into a directory I have here. And then what I'm going to do is copy the keys that I've downloaded. And then I should simply be able to log into my instance I've just created. So I just need to go back and let's go back into here, instance details, instances. And the IP address I want is this one here. So bear with me 2 seconds. Let's put that in there. All right. Oh, I see what I did. I see what I did. It's not going well today. Okay, so I'm in now, so that's all good. So I'm logged into my application server. So what I want to do now is update the firewalls. And let's reload that. Okay, so you have to restart the firewall after you've and that's all done. So now we should be able to access through using HTTPS. So what I want to do now is install Apache. So to install Apache, it's HTTPD, and I also installed the additional package mod SSL so that we can use SSL. Now this takes a few seconds to go in through because we've got a fair amount of binaries to download and so on. So this will just take a couple of minutes. Always feels a long time when you're waiting for these things. But it will soon be there. Yes, to that lot. And that's it done. So let's start it. So if you were on Ubuntu, for example, you'd be using start Apache 2 or something like that, whereas on Oracle Linux or any Red Hat variant, it will be HTTPD. So we've now started that. So let's just check our version. And that's what we've got, 2.4.37. And let's enable it now that we know that it's working. So the next thing to do is just to check in a browser. So what was the IP address first off? Let's just copy that IP address here. Control C, and then let's go to our browser and do something like http:// whoops, put in that. And what we should see is that, which is excellent. Okay, so we've now got Apache working. So that's the first hurdle covered. So now we've got it working. What we can actually see there, sorry, I'm going a bit mad here. Let me just move this away. Now that we've got it working, what we actually want to do is put our own index.html in the document root. One of the things that you'll notice on here is there's this bit of text here talking about welcome.conf, and it recommends that we should comment everything out in welcome.conf. So the first task that I'll do is comment those out with that little bit of Z. That's done that. And now I'm going to restart. Apache, just to pick up that change. And I'm going to create a new home page. So again, I'm trying to keep this simple rather than using vi or anything like that. So it's a very simple home page that just says hello world. Let's exit from that. And then let's retest this. Okay, so if we reload this now, what we should see is hello world, and we do. So we've got our first home page. So now we can start looking to install PHP. So the next thing we need to do is go to the REMI repository for install the REMI repository for PHP. And then go through the stages to enable it. Again, this is all in the notes, or all in the slide deck, I should say. And that's PHP pretty much installed. Once that finishes, I should say, yeah, now it's installed. So at this stage, we've pretty much got our stack done. We want to test that, of course. So in order for Apache to pick up PHP, we need to restart httpd. And then if we run the php -v command, we can see what version we've got in there, 817. And then we can create a simple PHP app. So again, let's do that simple PHP app. So I'm just using the php info command. And what we'll do is then look on our web browser and run something like this. So info.php. Okay, so PHP is working. So we can see all this information about our system, which is probably very insecure. So let's delete that little web page, as it were. So let's go back into here because we don't want to advertise all the features of our system, and remove it. But the main thing about doing that info.php is just to prove that PHP is working. So where are we on to next? We really just want to install a MySQL client for administration purposes so we can get to the database. So the way to do that is just to use MySQL shell, and we'll install here. Whilst that's cooking, let's have a quick look and get the private IP address of the database instance that we've just created. Okay, so we look into that, and then we get the private IP address here. Let's copy that. And then what we can do is go back to here and use MySQL shell I could type --URI admin, which was the administrator that I put in place when I created the database, that database, and I want to go straight into SQL. Okay, there's different modes within MySQL shell, JavaScript, Python, and SQL. I want to go to SQL, put in my password, and voila, we're there. So I can do show databases. So we've now got our database set up, and we can see that we're underway. So at this point, we've effectively built a whole LAMP stack, okay? And then we've done that in about 20 minutes with one big error right at the beginning. So I think we've done quite well there to get all that work done. So let's return to the presentation and move down to where we got up to. So this was the last thing we did, which was MySQL connectivity. Now, there's something that you need to know about Oracle Linux and indeed most Red Hat things, Red Hat variant type operating systems. By default, they tend to have SE Linux enabled and in enforcing mode. So if you've got a remote database such as we have, by default, SE Linux will block network remote database connections. So we need to either get rid of SE Linux, i.e. set it to permissive mode or disable it completely, or configure it. Now, I wouldn't suggest setting it to permissive mode or disabling it. So what I've actually done down here is shown you how to configure it. So the first thing to do is look here and see how you can actually make network connectivity for HTTPD. So this is the command here, sudo set se equal -p HTTPD can network connect db1. So true. And then what you have to do after that is restart HTTPD. If you go into more complicated Apache setups for, say, things like virtual hosts, you'll also have to set SE Linux policies to allow writing to directories outside the default directories that Apache has. And again, I've shown you how to do that here. Now, if you wanted to deploy some code, what I've actually done is I've put together a very simple application, but it's gone a little bit further than most normal applications because I want you to do things securely. So what I've actually done is used a package called .env so that you can store your database credentials outside the document root of your Apache setup. If you store your database credentials inside the document root, you are at risk of somebody actually being able to navigate that structure because it's all public and actually get your database credentials. So what I've actually done is put together a little application that you can clone, download from GitHub. I've got the link there, and it will go through all the instructions that you need to be able to deploy on this LAMP stack that we've just built. So the one thing, once you've started doing your web applications and you've do your web, your business is growing, as it were, the things that you need to be really concerned about is your application is secure? Can it scale to meet the demand? Does it need to be on 24/7? Can you have any downtime whatsoever? And because, everything's shrinking and we want to be able to do everything ourselves, do I have the time and resources to administer every component? So this is where the MySQL database service comes in, because you don't have to really do any database administration in terms of backups, upgrades, or anything like that, because it's all taken care for you. All you have to do is put your schema into the database, as it were. And then you should also be worrying, as you're growing, is what sort of support do I have with my current implementation? What happens if something goes down? How do I recover from that quickly? Again, with the MySQL database service, you can log support requests and you've got experts working with you to make sure your database is up and running. So you get even more successful. How do you scale this stack out? Well, again, the Oracle Cloud makes it very, very simple for you. So when you scale out, you want to be looking at scalability, you want to be looking at security availability. So what I've done is put together a simple architecture here whereby you can scale out your application server tier, so you can handle many, many, many thousands of concurrent requests. You've effectively build a larger, highly available MySQL database service for it to back onto. So you can cover that scalability aspect. If you use subnetting properly, as I've shown here, and things such as the web application firewall that comes with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, then you can become even more secure. Web application firewall stops things like the distributed denial of service attacks. So if someone's got bots out there all trying to hit your website and bring it down, that will stop it. Cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection attacks, all of those are covered by the web application firewall. You can configure it to prevent that sort of attack. And best of all, it's PCI compliant. So if you're in financial industries and everything like that, it makes it far easier for you to comply. As I mentioned before, we've got all the availability there because we've got redundant load balancers, redundant web app servers, and a highly available MySQL database. So it makes sense to work this way. So to conclude today's webinar, some alternatives to LAMP. Well, clearly you don't always have to use PHP. You can swap it out for Python or Perl. The LAMP acronym still works. You can swap Apache out for NGX and you become a LAMP stack, as it were. So a lot of people prefer Nginx now to Apache, so why not? There's something called a mean stack, and instead of MySQL, this uses a MongoDB backend. Well, you don't need to use a MongoDB backend because MySQL is a fully fledged document store. Its XDev API is as complete as MongoDB's API. Indeed, it looks very, very similar. So why go to all the expense of Mongo when you can use MySQL? So you can implement a mean stack with MySQL instead of MongoDB. And of course, if you're a big Python fan, you might want to use frameworks like Django and so on as well. And this is probably the simplest point of entry if you are a Python programmer. So there's plenty of ways you can use and change LAMP to suit your circumstances. And that pretty much concludes today. So I don't think we've got any questions and answers that we need answering at the moment. Please connect with us. We have a free trial as well. So if you connect with us and ask about free trials, we can set something up for you. And what I would also like to say is the next session commences on the 1st of July, and this is how to enable HeatWave for existing workloads. So that concludes from me. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.